Before you ever questioned your reality, you questioned yourself. That is how narcissistic conditioning works. It is not by force, but by erosion. It's not chaos in the beginning. It is the subtle dents in your self-trust until the mirror you're looking into doesn't reflect who you used to. There is always a moment, small and unforgettable to anybody else, but unforgettable to you, where you felt something was off and swallowed it because speaking it might start a fight you were not emotionally prepared to survive. A narcissist does not break you overnight. They make you slowly mistrust the woman who once knew exactly what she saw, felt, heard, and sensed. They rewire how you interpret your own body. They do not need to change the facts. They need to change your relationship with your own perception of them. Every woman that I've ever coached can look back and say, I knew. Not late. Early, before the trauma bond, before the chaos, before the meltdown cycles. It was instinctual. But instinct without permission becomes self-gaslighting. This episode is going to break down exactly that. Not just the behavior of the narcissist, but the conditioning that makes brilliant, intuitive, emotionally intelligent women question their truth because somebody else benefited from doubting it. I'm Megan Webster, an abuse recovery coach, a trauma-informed strategist, and the woman a narcissist hopes to never meet twice. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast, where women stop asking for permission to trust themselves, no longer negotiate reality to keep their peace, and they stop confusing tolerance with love. This is not going to be red flags you can Google. This is the psychological breakdown of self-trust that happens long after the moment you realize, holy shit, it was not me. This is for the woman waking up from the fog or possibly still in it and needs the words that no one gave her when she started shrinking to be easier to love. We're going to talk about how narcissists train you to doubt your voice, how you turn instinct into insecurity, and how you rebuild self-trust so deeply that nobody ever gets to rewrite your reality again. Narcissistic conditioning does not start with screaming, it starts with subtlety. It's the first moments where he says, you're too sensitive when you voice discomfort. When he remembers the argument differently and speaks it with such certainty that you question your own memory. It starts when you try to express a boundary and he responds with disappointment or anger instead of a discussion. So you soften your tone the next time to avoid that feeling. It happens when you explain something simple and he twists it into something complicated, leaving you defending things that you never did. This is the part that nobody sees and most don't understand. The slow psychological rewiring that teaches your nervous system that intuition equals conflict, boundaries equal punishment, and your truth equals instability. Over time, you learn that silence is safer than expression, that doubt is less risky than instinct, that your own inner voice is something to negotiate instead of trust. The danger isn't that he lies. It's that you start believing him over yourself. Because once he convinces you that your perception is unreliable, he never has to be accountable again. If you doubt your memory, he gets to rewrite it. If you doubt your feelings, he gets to invalidate them. If you doubt your worth, he becomes the authority of it. That's where the power comes from. It is not from dominance, but from disorientation. You are not stupid, you are conditioned. Your body will always know what this is first, before your thoughts, before the rationalization, before the story. Your nervous system has a faster processor than your cognition. It detects danger microseconds before language even forms. You felt truth in your chest before you could articulate it. You sensed shifts in tone before you had proof. You noticed inconsistencies before you dared to name them. But what happens when every instinct you ever have is met with dismissal? Your body always knew something was off long before your mind could make sense of it. That feeling in your chest wasn't anxiety, it was your intuition trying to get your attention. The drop in your stomach wasn't overthinking, it was your nervous system signaling misalignment. The shake in your voice is not insecurity, it was the truth trying to come out through a throat conditioned to swallow its own knowing. And when he looked you dead in the eye and said, that's not what happened, you didn't think he was lying, you wondered if you remembered wrong. Not because you're unsure, but because he sounded so sure. The trauma wasn't just the relationship, it's also learning not to trust yourself. The most violent part of narcissistic abuse, not the fight, the self-abandonment required to survive it. Because once you stop trusting your own cues, he no longer needs to invalidate you. Every time that you say to yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, every time you minimize your discomfort and swallow your truth to keep his peace, you aren't crazy, you are conditioned to distrust your own sanity. Gaslighting is psychological warfare performed through charm, logic, and emotional guilt. It's the art of distorting reality so subtly that you do not notice the shift until you're defending yourself against things you never did or agreeing to consequences for emotions you weren't allowed to have. It's an environment where you stop trusting your internal compass worse because someone convinces you that it's broken. Let's name what that actually looks like inside of your nervous system. You bring something up that hurt you, he minimizes it. You soften your delivery, he flips the narrative, you defend your experience. He says you're attacking him. You apologize, not because you are wrong, because you feel guilty for causing conflict. That right there is self-trust fractures. Incrementally, until you stop bringing up concerns altogether because you now carry the belief that your feelings create problems instead of solutions. Gaslighting doesn't condition you to believe him, it conditions you to stop believing you. This is why women stay, not because they don't see the red flags, but because they can no longer distinguish between intuition and insecurity. They've been trained to require external validation for internal truth. Because being clear feels dangerous when every past attempt at honesty ignited conflict, withdrawal, a silent treatment, or even rage. He didn't steal your confidence. He convinced you to hand it over to him for safekeeping, and then he used it as leverage. And this is where we begin with the takeover. This is where women learn how to rebuild. People think that trauma bonds are intensity, fire, obsession. I've never had a connection like this. But trauma bonds are actually a nervous system loop, a chemical conditioning between pain and relief, chaos and comfort, punishment and reward. It's addiction disguised as attachment. You are not addicted to him. You are addicted to the tiny hits of safety he gave you after he hurt you. Your nervous system will chase that feeling that follows pain harder than it will ever choose peace, because the relief feels like salvation. You didn't stay because he was good. You stayed because the moment he stopped being cruel and softened for an hour felt like oxygen after drowning. This is intermittent reinforcement. It is the most powerful psychological hook in abuse. Not consistent safety, inconsistent affection. Not steady commitment, unpredictable attention. This cycle trains your body to believe that love is something you earn through emotional endurance, not something you receive through reciprocity. And the worst part is you don't even know that it's happening. You've told yourself that you stay because you love him. You believe you were loyal, patient, understanding, compassionate. But you weren't loving him. You were surviving him. You were bargaining with your life and your nervous system for a moment of relief, mistaking adrenaline withdrawal for compatibility. If he hurt you and then comforted you, your brain bonded to the comfort, not the harm. The apology became proof of love. The reconciliation became intimacy. The cycle became normal until you forgot what healthy even feels like. Trauma bonds do not keep women trapped in these types of relationships because they are weak. Trauma bonds keep women because their brains are starving for the next moment of relief from him. And one day you will realize you're no longer fighting for love. You are fighting for relief from the pain that he caused you. You call it connection. Your nervous system's calling it captivity. Cognitive dissonance is the internal tug of war between what you know and what you hope. It's the moment your reality says one thing, but your attachment begs for one more outcome. Your mind sees the pattern, inconsistency, deflection, blame shifting, and your heart says, maybe this time will be different. The body resists leaving because leaving means losing the fantasy that you built of who he might become, of who he was in the beginning. That is the fantasy of security, closeness, and love, even if it only existed in potential. Cognitive dissonance is emotional purgatory. You're not happy enough to stay and not broken enough to leave. You replay conversations at night wondering if you were dramatic. You question your tone, your delivery, your timing. You pick apart your own reactions more than his behavior. You think if you could be more patient, more calm, more understanding, maybe you'll earn the version of him you met during the love bombing. You think you are the variable between cruelty and kindness. You think if you shrink enough, he will finally show up. You do not stay because you don't see the truth. You stay because the truth threatens the love story you wanted to believe in. And the brain chooses hope over reality to avoid grief. The nervous system protects the attachment even if the attachment is what's hurting you. This is why women ask, was it even abuse? Not because it wasn't, but because accepting that means accepting what you tolerated. You're not confused. You're grieving the fantasy of who you pretended to be. Before a woman leaves a narcissist, she leaves herself. Not all at once, but you become smaller to keep the connection. You apologize to keep the peace. You go quiet to avoid conflict. You accept crumbs and call it understanding, and you lower your standard then forget that you ever had one. Identity erosion is the final phase of conditioning. not because you stole who you were, but because you abandoned parts of yourself trying to love someone incapable of holding you fully. You stopped dressing the way you like because of his comments. You stopped sharing opinions and feelings because discussions became debates. You stopped expressing emotion because it got turned against you. You stopped holding boundaries because boundaries created backlash. Eventually, you have forgotten the version of you that once held fire, opinion, voice, intuition. You forgot the woman who doesn't justify her feelings, who doesn't walk on eggshells. You feel like you don't even know her anymore at all. This is why leaving doesn't restore your identity immediately, because the woman who escaped is not the same woman that walked in. She has to be rebuilt. You do not heal by finding yourself again, but by remembering that she never died. She was just buried under survival. Abuse makes you self-protective in ways that look like self-abandonment. A lot of my clients have said, I have no idea who I am anymore. I don't know what I want to do with my life. I lived so long in response to someone else that I've forgotten how to be myself without a threat. That is not failure. That's trauma logic doing its job. Rebuilding trust in yourself after abuse is messy and it's not glamorous. It's not a fucking journal prompt or a mindset shift that just suddenly clicks overnight. It is the daily inner work practice of showing your nervous system that the woman you are now keeps herself safe even when doubt screams louder than the truth. Your body relearns to trust through this experience. So the healing looks like speaking when your instinct fires instead of waiting until it becomes unbearable. It looks like taking space when someone withdraws instead of performing calm to win them back. It looks like letting messages sit unread until you feel grounded instead of scrambling for connection. It looks like choosing your needs before convenience. It looks like saying no before building a thesis to justify it. It looks like taking a pause during a spiral and reminding yourself you are no longer living in a home where you have to abandon yourself to survive. Each time you protect your own boundaries, your nervous system notices. Every moment you choose discomfort instead of self-sacrifice, something rewires. When you walk away instead of clinging to potential of, you build a new baseline. When you put yourself to bed without sending the clarifying essay or the location tracking, your brain learns safety. When guilt shows up and you act in alignment anyways, your self-trust walls thicken. It's not about becoming invincible. It's about being trustworthy to yourself. Abuse taught you to negotiate your reality. Recovery teaches you to honor it. This is where you learn to respond to your inner voice instead of debating it, where your body becomes home again. When you stop asking, is this too much, and start saying, this is what I need. Our membership is not about perfection. It's about repetition. The nervous system heals when actions make truth undeniable. If you're listening to this and something in your chest is swelling, the grief, the anger, the recognition, this is your nervous system waking up. And I know that you're ready to rebuild your self-trust without navigating it alone. This is exactly what we do inside of our membership. We retrain intuition. We rebuild identity. We create nervous system safety so that your decisions come from clearness instead of fear. I want to help you rise into the woman who is no longer lost in survival. This is not meant to be done alone. Abuse happens in isolation. Healing happens in community. When your self-trust comes back, life stops being a crisis you manage and starts becoming a life that you live. You go throughout your day without scanning the room, rehearsing every sentence, or waiting for someone's mood to shift like the weather. Your nervous system is no longer a fire alarm. You wake up and your first thought is, what do I need to do this morning? You eat breakfast without swallowing guilt. You make an extra coffee because you want it, not because you're bracing for a conversation. The silence in your kitchen finally feels neutral, not like a warning. You cook dinner with music on at the volume of your choice, and nobody is timing how long you stirred the pot. You're not flinching when a cupboard closes. You're not measuring peace in microminutes. You get to laugh with your child and it actually lands, not a hollow sound coming from a numb body, but a presence that's something you don't have to force. You sit on the couch without gripping your phone like emotional CPR. You watch a show without monitoring, watching for facial cues or listening for footsteps down the hallway. Suddenly, your stillness and the quiet is no longer a threat. Grocery stores are just grocery stores, not monitoring strangers, not planning exits, no internal commentary, preparing defenses. You pick produce, you grab bread, you stand in line like every other person who isn't surviving their nervous system. You look in your closet and you choose clothing based on desire, not a safety strategy against someone that quote-unquote loves you. Shorts because you like your legs, lip gloss just because. You're not shrinking to reduce conflict. You walk outside as a woman in her body, not a woman managing risk. You start making more decisions without a debate team in your head. You don't need to poll 5 friends to make sure you're not overreacting. You hear your instinct, and for the first time in a long time, you trust it. No apology, no editing your tone, no shrinking to be palatable for anybody. Self-trust gives you back your time, your presence, your skin, your mind, your voice. You're no longer the woman who survives love. You're the woman who chooses life. It is a quiet power. You are not waiting for permission anymore. You are the master of your own life. If this episode cracks something open in you, it means your body is remembering what self-trust feels like. Awareness is step 1, but integration is where everything changes. Please share this episode with another woman who needs to hear the truth today. And I know that now is the time for you to get love and support that you need. The Reinvent, Rebuild, and Redeem membership is where we do the deep work. Nervous system healing, identity restoration, boundary strength, co-parenting strategies, emotional safety, and the kind of self-trust you can just stand on but lean into. The link to join us is below in the show notes. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast, where women learn how to reconnect with themselves after abuse to rebuild a life that they love.